right, today is 30 August 2024, and boys, we're doing it. We're launching a podcast.
Woo!
Just like every other asshole in the army.
Doing it live.
Yeah.
Doing it live.
I guess kind of.
On a day off.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, definitely not telling my wife exactly what I'm doing. Just have a meeting of sorts, you know?
You know, it's a nice fall, crisp day. Let's say it's fall. Kind of. It's like a fall day.
Yeah.
According to Starbucks, it's fall. They bring pumpkin out already.
Yeah, pumpkin's
all
real.
I'm not.
Hey, what you can't see is, if you're a listener, RangerBaggins is wearing Uggs underneath the table.
Beautiful.
He drank his pumpkin spice latte this morning. Hey, but thank you for joining us. We're just trying to figure this out. Boys, I'll say one thing. So we did the interview yesterday with Colonel Kelly. Great interview with AJ here. And just for rules of engagement, all right? We're on a first name basis just for the podcast.
Just for the podcast.
Yes, sir.
Great job. That's why he gets the top block in COAR. We're going to move into the interview with Lieutenant Colonel Kelly. Great interview. And I will preface this. Podcasting is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've noticed just doing the editing, which makes me think a lot of these big podcasters probably have someone who just does all that for them.
We need a Jamie. Like
yeah,
Jamie.
Yeah.
Pull up who Sydney Sweeney is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah. TV.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You
There we go.
do that.
We got the most useless TV.
Yeah.
It's not hooked up to
We
anything.
did use it yesterday.
Did
But,
you?
Yeah.
it
was actually pretty handy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe we'll use it for the back half for the.
Oh yeah.
And we'll use it for our headlines off-duty Army times portion. But hey, great interview with Colonel Kelly. I will preface you, we did have some issues with the internet. I tried to clean it up as much as I could with the editing. And it's an emotional subject, and I'm an emotional guy. I can't help it. So there is kind of a breakdown towards the end. I'll just kind of give you that a little bit of a warning. But a great discussion. Colonel Kelly is one of the greatest dudes I've ever worked for. So let's get to the interview. At this time, we'd like to welcome a very special guest, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Kelly. And I would also like to say he's kind of the catalyst for this podcast that 3 people are listening to right now. Hit me up when I was at JVLM getting a sandwich over the commissary, and he asked, "Hey, John, are you an influencer?" And I was like, "Kinda." And he's like, "You got a podcast?" And I was like, "Not yet." And so, yeah, sir, I really appreciate you kind of spurring me on in this way, branching out in a different way. But looking forward to this discussion. Thanks for coming on. And before we get into your discussion, which is really the thing I love about this, is not super Army related. It's more family focused, which I'm all about. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thanks, John. It's always good to see you. I was wondering how we were going to kick this off. It was going to be like the Joe Rogan thing where, oh, we're live. Okay, we're live now. But no, so, and I think important to note, so John and I go back to, now I'm 319th Military Intelligence Battalion commander under 525. But then before I was in 525 years ago, when John was here, John was forward in Afghanistan when I got here. And then funny thing is, and this is usually how my good friendships work out, is I didn't like John when I first met him because he was doing change of command inventories. And what our lieutenant, who was trying to hold down this company, but John was doing the right thing by, attention to detail, everything, laying stuff out. But that wasn't the word I was getting. And then got to know John over time. And then we got very close. Tons of, I think, therapy runs, as Shelley Watson would call it, where we would talk about stuff like this that we're going to talk today. Your story is remarkable. But yeah, so battalion commander here now. I've been in the seat. Next month on 13th will be 90 days, so not 90 days yet. But born and raised in, I've got to bring it back to Sitka, Alaska. Many people don't know where that is, but I got to give a shout out to my peeps in Sitka. If you've seen the movie The Proposal, that's probably the only reference you had, or you took a cruise.
Great movie.
Through the Southeast. Yeah. And my life's a romantic comedy, because then I married a Canadian who's older than me, not crazy older, but we laugh because, and then she got her citizenship about a year and a half ago. So we're like, and I'm just as handsome as Ryan Reynolds, as everyone tells me.
Yeah.
But
one thing I have to say about that,
my wife, who you know her, you know
Yeah.
her as well, a very private person. She did tell me one time that Ryan Reynolds was her hall pass for me. So, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So, there we go.
Good
Just want to
taste.
throw that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife says a Bono. I even think at his age, like she had a huge crush on him in high school. I probably shouldn't be saying on here because this is like international, but um, yeah, I think back in the day my hall pass was Selma Hayek maybe. Yeah, I commissioned through Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. Everyone asked me, how you go from an island in Sitka to Arizona. My close friends say they always knew I was gonna leave the island and never look back. I am homesick. I want to go visit. It's a little tough with my son. We're gonna figure it out. You fall in love with Arizona, and then commission branch detail, infantry MI. All I ever wanted to be, I had no plan to make this a career. I just wanted to be an infantry platoon leader, and especially when the war kicked off when I was in college, and got to do that. I was told if I went branch detail and I did well in infantry, I could stay in infantry. Not the truth. Intel owns you from the beginning. They just kind of put you on a lease to infantry. I worked letters of recommendation, all that. And MI was just like, great, he sounds amazing. And I was going to get out. And then didn't really have any plan. Young captain didn't have tons of any good plans. But then they said career courses in Arizona. And I had some buddies still there. I was newly divorced, and I knew Intel wasn't going in the field. Up for Ranger Regiment. Nick Goshen got it. God rest his soul. We became friends after that when I was in 1st Brigade, 82nd, Devil for Life. When I was at Kandahar's Devil 2, and he came in with the Rangers. We got to do some good targeting. Then was it 525 where I met you? And I've been bouncing all over Fort Liberty until I took command. And it's really because of I know you're recruiting there around JBLM. I'm a huge fan of Fort Liberty, and a lot of it is because of the units. And the number one is because my son Ezra, as we kind of get in the story, he has a lot of medical needs and therapy needs. And while EF&P, it can be a struggle, but you can navigate the system. General Donahue charged me with EF&P efforts when I was at Corps. General Kurilla before that, working at EF&P app. And Ezra gets a lot of care at Duke here, some stuff on Womack, and then really we'll kind of get into it more here. But next to Duke is the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. For years we had Ezra had a working diagnosis. We didn't know what he had, and then we found what he had through the 3rd genetic testing when we were here. So, and we'll end up retiring somewhere in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area eventually. But I still like this gig as long as the Army will still keep me. I got to survive command. I don't know. There's a lot of seniors getting fired for dumb things, so I just keep my head in the work and PT. But that's me. I know I went a little long.
No. It's all good. And sorry for the audio cut out. It was definitely not Starlink internet. It was us. So, sir, yeah, I appreciate you bringing up Ezra. I got to, even though it was during COVID, I remember Ezra coming to the brigade for a lot of events. So we kind of wanted to launch into this, I guess, LPD or discussion about your My Ezra story. So, yeah, starting off, can you describe the moment you knew something was wrong with Ezra and how that felt?
So my wife would say, and I talk about it in this, about a couple weeks after he was born, where we noticed a skin discolorization. And then we went to see a dermatologist, and she talked to us about he has mosaicism on his skin. It's a skin discolorization that looks like almost if you see a mosaic picture. It's that blotchiness. That's why it's called mosaicism. And then the dermatologist noticed also he was born with a large head, but it wasn't abnormally large. Some kids are born with large heads, especially boys. But at this point, now it was starting to get a little bit off the charts. And she saw that it was likely macrocephaly, an enlarged head, and those two things she told us are linked, and it's a spectrum that these kids can have as they grow up. You could have severe physical and mental delays, and on worst case seizures. And then on the other spectrum, they're just going to have a big head. They're going to have the skin color the rest of their lives, but to be totally functioning. So that's when my wife knew something was up. You want to talk about the 7 steps of grieving? I was in shock. I'm like, nah, he's my only boy. Achilles are all that is man. He'll conquer the world. And but it was really when he was 6 months old, he had his first seizure, and he had a grand mal seizure, which is what most people know, as the spasming. There's different types of seizures, but that's the classic one people see in movies or have family members. And that's when I knew something was up. But he was still so young. Kids can get delayed in speech and walking, and they're totally normal. There's not like a set time they have to hit those gates. And so I still wasn't convinced. And I was in shock and denial stage, because his sister, my daughter, was the firstborn, and Zari, she's a little spitfire. Nothing. We'll talk at the end about something that came up with her, but she's totally good now. But she's off the charts in her education. She's in advanced math, English, I think even reading now. She was school president or class president 2 years in a row. She's running now. She's trying out for Ariel for Little Mermaid. She's in voice lessons, piano. I mean, she just, so it's like I wouldn't accept that something was wrong with my son until much later.
Yeah. And I think that's something, I've had this discussion with my wife. I was actually talking to her about it last night, but I felt like every time one of my boys, like with 3 boys, one of them was born, it was almost like every time they were born, someone always brought up, like in those first 48 hours, like, hey, their head's big, or like, hey, something's wrong with them. So yeah, there's all, I think with our last child, I told my wife, like, why is it every time we come to the someone's saying something's wrong with my kid? And last year with my second son, it's slower development. Each kid is different, and we thought that he might be on the spectrum for autism. And then last night I was talking to my wife. She was explaining her day, and they went to a playground, and he's talking to kids on the playground, and he's been doing OT and speech therapy. So it's though I can't experience what you've experienced with Ezra. I do know what it's like for a provider to be like, hey, something's wrong with your kid, or like, I think they have autism. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. It seems like it's always there, having kids at what's wrong, or is something wrong, or someone telling you that.
And I think the key thing too, I mean, I think a good thing for a podcast I would offer up, my wife hates when I do this, but if you have her on and for her to tell her version of her Ezra story, I think she calls it my beautiful journey, or my beautiful struggle, or something like that. But very different, because when she hears that stuff, she's decades of experience as a high risk labor and delivery nurse. So she's always been in the medical field. She's unfortunately, had patients die, moms die, babies die. She's seen way worse stuff than I have, crackheads that deliver. So I make it a point not to talk about my job, because I can't say I had a bad day versus hers. If I'm like, oh, I had to sit through QTB, or I had to produce this LPD PowerPoint. I learned that the hard way, but she hears it and she right away is the science brain. She's working. I have more of an art brain, and I don't have that experience. And and maybe I'm being biased. Maybe it's not politically correct, but I think males, and especially alpha males, won't accept struggles right away, because we believe we can handle and we can fix anything. And most males are just fixers. That's why our wives get pissed off at us, because sometimes they just want to vent, and we just want to fix, and you get in arguments that way. So that's why her story is very, very different. She's done it for some women's groups. She was going to do it for 66 MI after I did mine for 66, but Colonel Benbenek changed out. So I think it was just new commander figuring stuff out. I mean, I totally get it. If somebody told me, hey, we got this LPD lined up, I'd be like, let me first figure out the names of my soldiers,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, so I know you talked about, he was no identified issues, post birth, but months after, kind of talked about the skin condition popping up, around the 2 week period. Um, so moving after that, the 6 weeks and then the 3 months, and I guess the possibility, I guess you titled this the denial phase. We'll pick it up there and just continue to go down the 7 phases of grief. That's what.
Yeah, I think when I pick it up from there, the one thing I'll say is, because a lot of people have questions, did we do genetic testing when he was in utero? Did we do all that testing stuff? We did, and nothing was identified that there was something abnormal or anything wrong with my son. And when he was born, doctors, nurses did all the checks, and there was nothing abnormal when he was born. So then, so I talked about shock and denial with mosaicism, macrocephaly. And when I talk about, so I'll kick it off from the denial stage when he was 6 months old and he had his first seizure. You see in the pictures I have there, it's pretty tough where he's in the ambulance there. My wife went with him to the hospital. This was in Kansas. He went to Children's Mercy, and then you see the EEGs stuff on him. That was when he was there. They got to test and see what's going on after a seizure. But so I cross out there the 2100 because I swear to you, if you want to talk about shell shock PTSD, to this day, I swear that March 29th is my birthday. I swear I came home from CGSC. We celebrated my birthday with the kids, cake and everything. And then I went to bed. We went to bed, my wife and I, and she woke me up and said, I think Ezra's having a seizure. Because I remember being dark outside when the ambulance came. My wife, when I first was rehearsing to do this LP years ago, she's like, do you want to know the actual time? And I was like, okay, maybe 21:15 or something. She's like, no, it was 05:35, AM in the morning. And I was like, no. She's like, it was your birthday, but I woke you up because I remember you said you wouldn't PT, which I shouldn't say that, but because his birthday, stay here with us. But and I know my wife was in a bit of shock too, because for her, as a high-risk labor and delivery nurse and everything she's seen, for her to say, I think Ezra's having a seizure. When someone's having a grand mal seizure, it's clear as day. I mean, when I showed up, I was like, yeah. And then she said, what do we do? I mean, she's in mom mode. She's not in nurse mode. And I said, call 911 and you get on the phone. I'll be with him. And she's still right there. And I'm having him on the side, he's little thing, and checking his airway. And ambulance comes and everything. And they went about the way. She goes, when the ambulance left, it was daylight and the sun came up. And I don't remember that. She said, do you remember the neighbors coming over? And, Mike Knaus, good friend of mine still, they came over to check on us, everything's okay. And I said, no, I remember when I picked him up from the hospital, when we came home, she made some homemade awesome lasagna for us for dinner. And I remember that. And I of course I believe and trust my wife, but I called my buddy Mike, and I think he's actually in Washington State there. And I said, hey, is that true? This is what Nazir is telling me. He goes, yeah. And he goes, I'm not surprised you don't remember. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you had that hollow eyes, no soul look like we've seen from our battle buddies deployed, and even some of us in that shell shock PTSD. And so I still don't remember it. It's totally blacked out in my brain, but I trust my wife and trust my friends that it happened in the morning. But yeah, so that was really the shock and denial. And then throughout CGSC, now I'm in the interview process, already starting to lock in jobs. I was offered a lot of units, by name requests, which was the old way. Like now it's the AIM 1-1 match, but by name requests. So you're pretty much guaranteed to go to that unit of choice with the by name requests. I tried to influence, coming to 82nd, of course, the G2 gets a vote, Colonel Damsky, and then Chief of Staff and Brigade Commanders weigh in. I tried to influence going to 1st Brigade, 82nd Devils, not only because it's one of the best units in the Army, I'd say the best because I'm biased, but they were the only unit deploying. I mean, I was offered 66th. I was offered 3rd ID. I was offered, I think, Fort Cavazos now, Hood at the time was 1st Cav, and some others, but none of them were deployed. And I I had to take this, and she knows deployment's part of my job. She was my girlfriend at the time when I first went to Afghanistan, and we got through it. She knows what she signed up for. But I lied to her. I didn't have to take it, but it was a way to get away from my family. I did not want to, I have on here, I couldn't handle my son's condition. And it's really looking back as I wouldn't handle it, because at the end of the day, you always have a choice, and it just was tough. And so I went about the deployment. We PCS right here. Household goods, of course, were late. Standard story. I think we just got it, and then I was on plane to Afghanistan for about 8 to 9 months, and big struggle for my wife. I didn't know what was going on back in the rear because I didn't ask. I didn't want to know what was going on, and my wife didn't tell me a whole lot, maybe a couple things. And she's always done that in deployments with me because she wants me focused on the fight and wants me to come home alive. But I could have asked more, and I would often ask more about Zara because I could talk to her. And actually, I have a picture on there with a battle buddy at the time, my NCOIC. There was one day was pretty tough for me. It was probably, plenty of days, but one day, and I don't remember why, something to do with my son. I think because he was turning 1. We knew stuff was happening with him. What's going on, sir? And, nothing, because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable. And I'm in his face. What's going on? I'm a major. You can't talk to me like that, NCO. But I didn't say those words. But he closed the door to the office, and he said, "You're going to tell me what's going on, or I'll get it out of you." He's a collegiate wrestler. He's got muscles where I didn't even know there's muscles. And so I talked to him, and he said, "You need to go see the chaplain." And I said, "No, I'm not going to see the chaplain." He said, I knew he was a wrestler. He knew I was a boxer back in the day. He said, if you don't go, I'll put a double leg on you, take you down. In a split second, I thought, you can try. I'll knock your ass out. But that only lasted about a couple seconds, and I knew he could take me. So he literally escorted me to the chaplain, because he knew if I said I'm going to go, I would leave and I wouldn't go. And then Mark, the devil chaplain, as I love to call him, he got me through the deployment. And I probably lied and stuff, but I was not ready to come home. And so when I came home, last deployment with my wife, then girlfriend, we picked up right where we left off. So I wasn't expecting anything different when I got home. And when I came home, took leave, and I'm already now going to head up to 82nd Division to be the ace chief. So I had a leave plan. And on leave, every day, not over exaggerating. And if it wasn't multiple times in the day, there was doctor appointments, doctor visits, therapy visits. Therapy would come to the house, equipment measuring for my son, for handicap equipment. And I cut leave short and just showed up, reported to work at division early. My, boss questions what's going on. I just lied and said, plane stuff didn't work out or something got messed up, and I'll take leave at another time. And then I lied to my wife and said I had to report early. And 82nd is a very busy place. And I did my job, and I did more than my job because I just didn't want to be home. But at this point in time, my she's already in the previous to that, while I'm deployed, she's already in the testing acceptance phase. I talked about she's a nurse, medical field, so she knows got to get to work. Let's figure out. And again, my son still had a working diagnosis. He was still undiagnosed of what he actually has, which is Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome, very rare genetic disorder. But yep, so I'm still in my angry phase, crushing it at work. My peers, my seniors and subordinates, it's up to them if I truly crushed or not. I think I did. Hope I did. But it was the time when I was an ace chief, I didn't talk about Ezra. People would ask about my family. And I became a verbal ninja. I was very good at talking about my daughter. If anyone got talking about Ezra, they started to know he had seizures. So then they want to talk about me about, oh, my son or daughter has epilepsy. And I was very quick on putting the conversation on you and your family, and never shining a light about Ezra. Because I was, it always pains me when I do this LPD to say this, but at that time I was ashamed of my son. And I didn't want to talk about him, and I refused that something was going on with him. But at that time, my wife had a hospital visit. I think it was a standard EEG, and then they found out he had West syndrome, which is also known as infantile spasms. And if it goes untreated, every kid dies of if it goes untreated, every kid dies of brain damage. So right away he's got to be admitted. It was roughly there was about a week under monitoring and steroid treatment. And the best way I can describe West syndrome or infantile spasms is like, so he has seizures. And so picture that as like your app on your TV. I used to say satellite to describe this, but I think everyone streams. And so, and then you're like how we're having glitches here, like
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
yeah. So it goes out, but then it comes back on a little bit. That's a seizure. You know, my son will have him and he comes back and he's good to go. West syndrome is like, you and I at least know, but maybe other audiences when they listen to this podcast, younger than us, they probably won't get this reference. But all I got is that didn't get, and then if you couldn't get a signal, then you had a completely grayed out screen. That's what West syndrome is. So you have this fogginess and it's deteriorating until you have like no picture, and then you go brain dead and you die. So then I had to tell my boss, because we're getting ready for the combined arms rehearsal the next day. Ace Chief has a big role in that. And I got to go to my boss, and that was, shout out to Colonel Benedict. I'll give her a shout out every day, because when I needed her, she came through, and it was we had a lot going on in 82nd. And I said, I got to take, I think medical leave or emergency leave might have qualified, or I had leave. And here's what's going on. And she said, close the door. What's going on with your son? And I told her and some other stuff. And she's like, why have you never told me this? And I honestly don't know what my reply was to get out of that office. I probably lied some more. But when I do this LPD, I always challenge leaders, like, how do you get that conversation out of people, that hard talk? It's not water cooler talk. It's not gym talk. And what I typically recommend is when you ask somebody how their weekend was, you should leave it not a single word question, but an open-ended question. So they have to describe how their weekend was. If I ask you how your weekend was and it wasn't good, you say, it's okay. But what did you do this weekend? You can dig a little deeper, but how do you get those tough conversations out to know what's going on with your team? And I'll give another shout out to General Donahue. He said it starts with PT, not just to get physical training in, but you PT together for a reason. And you can check on each other. You're going to find out quick early in the morning, going through some hard PT, if somebody's on or if they're off, and then what's going on. But so she gave me a week or so leave that I needed when my wife was in the hospital with Ezra. He was at least safe enough to come home. The steroid treatment is starting to work. And then he, if you see one of these pictures here where I'm laying down sleeping, he's sleeping on me. He looks like this super chubby, cute boy. He's actually swollen from the steroids. That's what steroids does. And he was, roid rage is a real thing. I'm not convinced, nobody's going to tell me otherwise, but he got swollen, and because he took it for about a month, and he was, Ezra, you met Ezra, the happiest kid. Zara is sometimes a little punk, my daughter, but he was just angry, crying, fussy all the time. And from when he'd wake up till he went to bed, we asked the doctors, what can we do? He said, as part of the steroid treatment. And we're like, he's constantly hungry. And they're like, just keep feeding him. And, and so my wife and I say that was our toughest. She said, that was harder than when I was deployed, that month and a half. But thankfully the steroid treatment worked. We got rid of West syndrome. And So now I'm still in the angry phase, but now I'm starting to get full on depression because something's clearly going on with Ezra. And he's clearly at this point, I think he's a couple years old. He's nonverbal. He's nonverbal to this day. He's verbal. He can't say any words. He'll squawk, squeak, yell, whatever. But he's not crawling. He's having seizures now. This West syndrome. So this kind of goes to my darkest time in my life. I needed and wanted a miracle. I say wanted now because back then I thought I needed it, but really I wanted it because I wouldn't accept my son for who he is. So I remember, I was born and raised Christian, and faithful to that point. And then I remember I told my wife one evening, I said, "Hey, I'll put him to bed. I'll give him his meds, put him in bed." And early in the morning, I told my wife, "Hey, just sleep in." I got him, checked on him when he was awake, and was hoping he'd say a word or something. No signs of change. And I remember going in the corner. I know you're up there, but you're lazy and selfish. And I'll go about this my way from here on out. So about 2.5 years, I renounced my faith. I got it back later on. But yeah, that was probably the darkest moments of my life. I was still an Iron Major, because if you don't put any energy in, I wasn't an active father to my son, but then as a result also to my daughter because I was never home, and then I wasn't an active husband. So if you put all your energy in work, it's not hard being an Iron Major. So I was crushing it at that time. But I was for lack of better words, I mean, there's no other words I can think of, as a piece of shit father and husband. And thankfully, my wife stuck it out with me. But then I became a walking, talking hypocrite. Well, even though I renounced my faith, my wife found hers. That's why her story is very different than mine. Her beautiful journey, as she calls it. So all the struggling with Ezra, she found her faith. I still insisted that we take our kids to church because I didn't want people to find out that I renounced my faith. My wife knew, and then I insisted we baptize Ezra, and I'm just faking the funk and faking it all. But everyone kind of talks about what was the turning point in those 2.5 years. And John, I don't even know if I told you, but it was sometime during 525, and it wasn't a sudden moment. I think, I love how David Goggins says, he's like running, he's like, the song came out, all I need is a miracle, and the miracle ain't coming. You got to do it yourself. And, it was definitely, looking back, I know it was God's will helping me, but I had to pull myself out of the gutter. I had to put in more work to my family, more time with my family. And I'll go into some tools and stuff later on that helped me with that. But it was a gradual process. But one catalyst of that was, I talked about before, the Undiagnosed Disease Network. So we tested twice genetic testing with no results. And we got into the Undiagnosed Disease Network. That is the top end. So they talked about genetic testing again. We're like, but it was a different way they did it, and in a more in-depth way, I guess. Months later, after the test, they found that he had Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome. And so this wasn't, I'll get to that in a sec. So I didn't even show up to that appointment when they said, "Hey, you need to come in. We need to talk to you about something." Because I was so used to bad news. And that's when I was at DXO. Because we had some of you, I think that might have been the day you redeployed, but we had soldiers redeploying. And so I called in when the doctor was there, and she told us the good news, as my wife says, but then my first question is, okay, so is there a treatment? What are we going to do to fix this? Like, I don't care at that time that he has a diagnosis. What are we going to do about it? And they said, well, this is actually a very extreme, rare disorder, and we don't even know much about it. And we found out months later, this was the catalyst. There was the first ever Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome conference. Something in me told me we had to go, which isn't like me, because I was worried if we showed up, it was going to be this hippie kumbaya, holding hands in a circle. Everything's okay. We're going to sing songs. And I was like, good God, if that's what it is, I'm out of here. But met some awesome families. Yeah. I met some awesome families. There were doctors there. There was information about what this was. And then after the conference, shout out to Mike and Kristen Grossclose. They reached out and grabbed a couple of us family members and wanted to see if we wanted to be on a board of directors and start the nonprofit organization that's at Smith-Kingsmore.org to help out, to raise money so we could get after this syndrome. And since then, we've raised I think it's over $3 million. We're doing genetic testing towards a cure in a lab in Florida and a lab in California. We got our first ever medical student that's going to graduate in focusing on the specialty. It's really snowballed and taken. And you remember doing some of the workouts, the WOD that you could have beat me in, but you did one thing wrong. And you got DQ'd. I remember that one here, but that was one of the efforts to raise money. And so that was the healing process for me. I found people. I was not alone on an island, which I thought I was. I found people that were dealing with the same thing. Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome is another, there's a window to, not a window, I shouldn't say, but it's a variation kids can have. So some kids that can walk out there, some kids that can kind of talk, some that need feeding tubes, some that have seizures, some that don't have seizures. It's a variation for these kids. It's not just like one thing. And you see that kind of with autisms. There's high end, low end. But I was healing through that. And by taking action on this nonprofit organization, that's where I started to find, hope and love. And that's where I really started to be vulnerable and have these conversations with Mike, with Dan Lepore, with everyone on the board. But really it was my SKS bros, and I really found out, like, it's okay not to be okay. Sometimes, we got in a much better place, but the days sometimes are still hard. I'll get to what I think about grief, but this started to be my testing phase, and then finally into my acceptance phase of grieving. If it's me, even going to BCAP to try out for battalion command, I knew I needed to get a command here on Fort Liberty for my son's medical needs, and also because I'm biased and think 319th is the best intel battalion in the entire Army. But so I go to BCAP, and it's me and my peers competing for, if someone wants 319th and my son's medical stuff's on the line, like, I will destroy you. Like, you will not, you might be smarter than me, you might be more talented than me, you will not outwork me. And so, helped, I was launching an EFMP app when you knew me there, and then co-developed some of the EEFMP app with DAG9. We started this nonprofit. Roy Cooper again this year declared Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome Day. It was, I'm so bad, but it was the 15th or the 17th this month. I'm off, but I should know that because he's done that like every year. And then you've done fundraising WODs. I won Dragon's Lair, which is like Shark Tank here at Core with that EFMP app. I have my Special Brother book that's on Amazon, became a children's author, and then trying to write my next book. But and now I'm on the DoD Special Needs Advisory Panel, and then actually was talking to General George's wife, Mrs. George, her front office with her aide about she's really working EFMP efforts. And shout out to Colonel Salisbury, that I guess, I don't know, some room or some setting, she's up there in the Pentagon and said, has anyone reached out to Eric Kelly? And they're all like, who the hell is Eric Kelly? Just lonely me down here, because I've done those efforts for General Kurilla and General Donahue, and she was here at Core. She was like, she thought I was a medical officer until we went to AUSA, and she saw, back when they were in the ASUs, and she saw my MI blue, and she's like, I thought you were medical. I was like, no, I just do that because of my son. But yeah, I'm just, I know Ezra changed me for good, and I'll get into why you shouldn't ask the why when you're in the struggling, because now I know why God gave me Ezra. And to be fair, if Ezra was completely healthy, I would probably ride him pretty hard versus my daughter because he's my only son. Like he will box, he will do wrestling. He will have like he's going to do. He'd have no choice. And so maybe it's I think it's good that I have Ezra that I can't force him to do that. All right, so here's we're gonna go a couple thought processes here that I encourage people to change the paradigm on. I hate when it comes to grief when if I got to listen to one more TED talk or some senior leader saying that time heals all will not true or something in life. Grief is like carrying a rock in your pocket. So some days it's a smooth skipping stone that you don't even notice is in your pocket. It kind of pokes you and prods you as you're at work, but you can still go about your work, but you kind of feeling it then. And then some days out of the blue, not always a certain time, it's a huge crushing boulder that just getting out of bed is the hardest thing to do, even if hopefully you can that day. That's the best analogy, I think, with grief. And I was actually talking to one of my soldiers that, he had a recent loss, and actually great timing of this podcast. I sent him my white paper and the charts, and he said that's the best analogy he's heard of. And then I quote I started living by, and I'll die by, but I started living by it when I was doing Golden Gloves in high school. But it's from Bruce Lee. It's do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. I think too many of us, it's human nature. You always want to take the easy. It's completely human nature to want to take the easy path, but more often than not, that's not the right answer. And honestly, if I didn't have Ezra in my life, and it's a tough life with him, but I wouldn't have been able to do, and my wife to do all this stuff to help these other kids and other things in special needs community. And honestly, I think without him, my life would be pretty boring. So I don't search for the retirement and the white picket fence and have a boat and stuff. Like, I think I would be pretty tough to wake up in the morning, because that sounds pretty lame, at least in my another analogy I got when I was in boxing, this came back when I got through the struggle with Ezra, but so, Eastern culture with the yin and yang and coexistence, but I grew up in Sick, Alaska. It's a big Native American community, Tlingit, a lot of Tlingit friends. And my boxing coach, Victor Littlefield, he told me about it's actually Cherokee proverb, but it's about there's two wolves living inside of you, constant fight to devour your soul. And it's the light wolf and the dark wolf. And the elder later, the young warrior says, which one wins? And the elder says, the one you feed the most. Now everyone thinks, okay, then you should always feed the light wolf. But there's more to the tale, if you dig deeper, that says, no, you have to let the wolves know that you're the master and commander, and you have to feed them both. So I think when you're dealing with grief, it's okay not to be okay, and you're going to be angry, and that's okay too, but you got to feed it, and you got to use it at the right place. So there's times where I go to a dark place when I'm lifting, running or things like that, or if I'm working on a book and I put that rage, that anger towards something, and I feed the wolf so it doesn't starve. Because if that dark wolf starves, tragedy will hit you in life. Struggle is guaranteed. As much as you want to stay with it, it comes to everyone. But now that dark wolf is going to feast, and it will take control of your soul. It did to me for 2.5 years. 2.5 years I lived off of rage, and I didn't feed that life wolf, because I wouldn't become vulnerable, and I wouldn't accept help from other people. And that kind of brings me to my last point here. So it always gets people when I end it with this. So it's like, oh, great, he made it through and everything. No, I just said struggle is always going to find you. So again, around my birthday, March 29th, 2023, we think Zara has pneumonia. We take her into the doc. My wife takes her in, because I stayed home, because at the same time my mom is going through upper spinal reconstructive surgery at 79 years old. And so I'm on the phone trying to translate to my dad because he speaks hillbilly, he doesn't speak doctor. What's going on? Everything's okay with my mom. They're living together, but they're just older, so I have to help out my dad. My wife comes home. She looks very different from that appointment. And I'm like, okay, she has pneumonia. So what? I'm like, what's going on? She says, nothing. And I said, no, what's going on? And she said, I'll talk to you about it later. And I said, no, what's going on? And she goes, I'll talk to you over here. And so we go away from Zara. She goes, they found on an x-ray, they found like a cyst or something behind her heart. And I'm like, she goes, oh, and then later we went and did MRI and all these things and found out she had a tumor. She had a tumor. We went through, found out it wasn't cancerous, and then they went in to do a sample to double check it wasn't cancerous. They were able to get it out, thankfully, and it was a tumor the size of a tennis ball. And at the time, Zara was 8, and she's a little 8-year-old. She's a tiny thing for her age. So I couldn't believe it. Now, what got me through that was very different than when I was dealing with Ezra, because of some of these tools that I have on here that I learned. So the one thing I'll mention on, so when my wife told me that initially they found an cyst, I took a moment and practicing gratitude, because I thought, what an amazing woman I have that's willing to carry this burden while I'm trying to help out my mom. What a blessing that I have this career. People can dog TRICARE, EF&P all they want, but that right away my daughter can get the medical care she needs. What an awesome boss I have that wouldn't allow me to come to work and ordered me that I will take leave, even though I was going to. I was in a better place. So there's things when tragedy, when struggle hits you, we more often not want to think our whole life is out of control. It's not. Take a moment, pause, tactical pause, take a SEAL's halt, and understand there's some other things that are okay and doing well in your life. You already talked about becoming vulnerable. I'm not gonna hit on every one of these. So don't question the why. Why am I going through this? Why me? Why only me? You're not the only. And like I said, my faith, I can tell you, in the time where I struggled with Ezra, and especially that 2.5 years in the dark place, if an angel came down and said, you're going through all this, so then later you can help so many more, and you can do what some of the things I explained that I did, I still wouldn't accept it, because in the struggle, I didn't want my son to have Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome. Of course, I don't want him to have it now, but until we find a cure, it's not like I'm not going to love my son. I love my son. He's my forever baby. I always get cuddles with him. My daughter's 9. She's like preteen. Half time she doesn't even want a hug from me, and I get that from my son. So it's awesome. And then the other thing I did with my daughter, this last point I'll make, is when I was hugging my wife and we're crying, when she's telling me, we're crying, I had this watch on and I went, and I'm crying, and I started a timer, and she heard the beep and she said, what was that? I said, I'm giving myself 24 hours. So if you have the time, what I recommend is you got to feel the emotions, right? You got to feed that dark wolf, but feed it fast, because you got to get to work too, especially as a parent. Stop this selfish thinking of why me, why me. You got to get to action for your child, for your spouse, maybe a loved one. So I gave myself 24 hours. I call it the pity potty, not the pity party, but being on the toilet like a little child and blaming others, questioning my faith, not giving up my faith, but questioning it, and all this stuff. And when the timer went off the next day, it was time to get to work. There's still feelings will come, but I think most of us, we want to take that stuff like I did with my son and bury it down deep and never experience it. It will still pop up, and it sometimes can pop up in the worst way. One of the times when I was in a dark place with my son, and he had a bad seizure, I couldn't talk to my wife. I went out to my garage and started deadlifting. That wasn't working. And so then I didn't have a heavy bag, and I started punching the wall, and then I blew some holes in the drywall, my garage, and I bloodied my knuckles. Came to work the next day and made up some lie why I had bloody knuckles, promised somebody I didn't get in a fight, wasn't in a police blotter. But yeah, man, that's my story, and struggle still exists. Thankfully, my parents got a home just 10 minutes. They're going to move now from Arizona, because my mom and I had a serious talk. But they're just going to be 10 minutes away from us, because my dad, he's struggling with the terminal illness now, and the doctors told us, with chemo and blood transfusion, it's a Band-Aid. They're just trying to buy time. He's on borrowed time. So, it's like, Mom, you got to be close, because I can take leave and get out to you, but you're going to live with us. But she didn't want to live with us. She's like, your house is crazy. We call it Kelly Crazy Shack. But she's like, I do want to be close. But I don't want to live in your house. No offense. And I was like, yeah, it's okay, Mom. But
so just one thing I was going to say, it's funny. I was talking with my other Hobbit, who's not here right now, Second Lieutenant Anderson, former regiment guy. We were talking about chaplains yesterday, and my kind of take on it is, and I don't know if your chaplain's in the room right now, but please don't hold me against this. But
his name is Mark Miller. I wanted to get his full name out there. Mark Miller. He's in 5th Corps now.
So I've always kind of been on the thought that when it comes to the chaplain spectrum, it's kind of like supply sergeants. You've got really good ones, and you've got ones that suck or are weird. There's no such thing as an okay chaplain. So, I know both of us know when we were at 525, like a Chaplain Adams, I think like a guy like that, awesome, just going above and beyond. But, he was there for me in the past. So it's encouraging. And I told this to Anderson. He was saying, it's like, chaplains are pointless. The only time you need them is on a deployment when something bad happens. And I was like, I called one, and there was one that was there for me. And I was in garrison, and I wasn't even there co-located. So it's, the chaplains are doing great things. And I'm glad there was one there for you that you were able to talk to, because that was going to be one of my questions afterwards. Like, what did they do to support you? But,
I'll say with Mark Miller. So when you say the good ones, that know their tradecraft. So when I first went in there, and I knew Mark from CGSC. We were swim buddies before he was a brigade chaplain. And, I went in there, I said, hey, and he's like, what's up? And I'm like, well, I'm here to not just to visit, but like do your chaplain thing. I don't know. And I said, but I swear to God, if you bust out the Bible and you lay some verse on me, because I'm about to tell you some things, like, I will walk out of here. And he said, oh, okay. And he's like, you like fishing? And I was like, what the hell? And then he slowly built that relationship. And then I would notice when he would slip some stuff in, and I was like, oh, I missed it. And he's like, does it help though? And I'm like, no, it does help. He's like, okay. So
yeah. And it's interesting too, just, when you're going over these phases, like the Eric Kelly I know is the acceptance phase. That's I didn't know you prior when you were going through all this, and all I've seen through your life and your demonstrations, like, man, this dad who does awesome things. Like, I think back to the SKS WADs, which the last one I did.
Oh yeah.
So the last one I did, it was a lot of 315 deadlifts and then a sandbag run for a mile. And I was in Arizona at the time, and I go home and I start pissing blood in the shower, by the way. Don't tell my wife that. Hopefully she's not listening. That sometimes I do that. But I was like, something's wrong. And then I found out, I thought, like, oh man, it's rhabdo. Turned out it was kidney stone. First one, at the ripe age of 32. It's a thing that happened. Poor genetics. But things like that's what I know you as, and I remember kind of speaking about, like, the life is worth having these struggles. It's more, it is better, experiencing these things, even though times that suck. There's a really good book. It's the Subtle Art of Not Giving Up. I don't know if you ever read that book, but he taught. Yeah, it's the guy's an atheist, humanistic kind of approach, but he talks about, life without struggle would just be terrible, because you grow from it and you grow closer to others. So
Fred Joyce, a good buddy of mine, an awesome intelligence warrant officer, but he we got close over the years. He's done some WADs, and he said, SKS WADs, he said, we were talking, he's like, you can't have a testimony without a test. And I was like, yeah. And so when I started doing this LPD, because I want to do it as a TED Talk one day, Dom Gias is going to hook me up. But
I actually put you in for it as well.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Dom Gias is like, hey, once this podcast gets out, and we'll get you on there. But I started this because, yes, I was getting mad of, you see some of these TED Talks with either people who don't have the proper education, they want to talk some stuff, or those who do have the proper education, but they're book smart, they're theorists, they're not practitioners. And, I think they're giving out sometimes the wrong advice. And to me, I'm just like, a simple analogy is like, if you're trying to get in shape, why would you go seek advice from a fat, trainer? Like, I'm not going to listen to them, but if someone's fit, I'm going to talk to them and trust what they have to say. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. AJ, anything to add?
Oh yeah. First off, really appreciate you. Major Howell sent me your stuff, and I was like, I didn't really know, obviously, about Smith-Kingsmore or any of that kind of stuff, and really got into it. And the thing that stuck out the most to me, and even with talking to you here, is the vulnerability piece. So
what's that? What's that? What
the
piece?
vulnerability piece. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's pretty crazy that you're just as open as you are now. And I guess it's easier for you now to just be like, yeah, I lied to this person, or I was running away. And as you're doing that, I think a lot of people, because I've done it myself, and it really like highlighted a huge portion of my life where I was doing that and I wasn't cognizant of it. And that's like really powerful of you to be able to sit there and say, I was running. Like, that was, from my foxhole, like being able to sit there and be like, I was doing the same thing. Or you see other people doing it, and then, like you said, having those hard conversations. Like, yes, that was like one of the things. I'm even getting emotional thinking about it. I was just like, wow, that's very powerful that this guy's just like, I was running away. This is what I was doing to hide from my issues, essentially. And, that was just really awesome. That was the biggest thing that I took away from this. Like, hey, you got to take a step back and realize when you're doing some of this stuff. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. The key thing to that too. So it does take, it is tough to initially open up. Like, it takes energy. It's tough. It takes some work. But it takes, I believe, way more work and energy to keep up with your lies and to keep it suppressed in. I was wasting all this spiritual, mental energy suppressing it. And, then once I opened up, and then what I found out is, like, every time I do this or talk to someone, I find out more about them, and they're dealing with something. And I'm convinced everyone is dealing with something. Some just hide it better. And I think you get more so if we're talking about leadership, you get more buy-in from your soldiers if they learn that you're a human being. We've all seen the leaders that walk around like they got everything perfect and everything's going well. They're just lying. I'm not saying you should open up about everything. You do got to remain professional, but those that act like they got it all going on, they don't. They're just hiding it better. I was one of them. And when I did this LPD for 66th Military Intelligence Brigade, Colonel Benedict, when she was introducing me, she didn't know what to take of it because I sent her the white paper. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but I remember the keyword. She said, hey, Lieutenant Colonel Kelly, she's like, Eric Kelly, he's very intense, and some other things she said. And then when I was done with the LPD, she's like, I never knew like this side of you. So to John's point, back when I was in 82nd, I wasn't like this. Actually, my analysts in 1st Brigade, 82nd Devils, I kept hearing this nickname in the BICE when I was walking around about dead eyes, no soul. And I'm like, and I'm just walking around, they're talking. I'm like, I know, I love it. Let the troopers talk, and they have nicknames, and it's not, doesn't violate Sharp or EO. But I kept hearing it. And so finally one day I'm walking by, and they're working on stuff before the targeting brief. They're going to rehearse with me before the brigade commander and the BEB commander. And I heard the name. And so I came around and I said, hey, who is that, by the way? And they all, almost went to like attention in their chair. And I was like, hey, I'm like, the brigade commander here. And they're like, oh, no one, sir. And I'm like, no. I thought I was pretty well in with my troopers at that point in time. And then it was Specialist Potts. He's laughing in the corner because he's always so open. And he's like, he's laughing. And I'm like, Potts. I'm like, what's so funny? I'm like, seriously, who is it? I just want to know. I'm not going to say you can't say it. And he goes, it's you, sir. And I'm like, what? I'm like, dead eyes, no soul. What do you mean? They're like, sir, every time we brief you, I was talking about earlier, my rusty angry face. They're like, you look like you have dead eyes and it looks like you have no soul in your body. And then I was like, have I ever knife handed you? Have I ever yelled at you? Have I ever, I always had their back in front of the brigade commander. And they're like, no, you've never done that. It's just your face. And I'm like, I'm really listening. I'm like intensely listening. And then I'm taking notes and I'm like, when you're talking about this, maybe shift it here. Don't say that to the brigade commander. Bring it up at this point in time. And so I'm cognizant of that, as a battalion commander now. And I know it's one of my weaknesses. What I do to work on it is like we're doing now. I engage soldiers first because when I talk, I open up. And when I listen, I have to, even here in this podcast, I have to tell myself, like, smile. It's okay, just smile. But I had Colonel Cobb, when he was chief staff at Corps, he told me, like, it's okay to smile. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like I'm the Joker. Like, I feel like I'm super creepy. I'm not smiling. Like I should be 100 yards away from a child's playground. But I'll try.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'll ask, talk about the tough lug advocates, and you mentioned that NCO, which that's one thing I appreciate about NCOs and Sergeant Carmack, especially like, I don't think there's ever been to a level where he was always comfortable, like calling me out. When that NCO called you out like that, and like, hey, you're gonna go talk to the chaplain, he's like, I'll fuck you up if you don't. How hard was that for you? Because very successful career. I mean, you're on a deployment. I mean, that's the last thing I would want to hear, at that time. How was that? I mean,
so one thing I noticed before that happened was on the brigade commander's calendar. I always saw, I don't know if it was every week or every other week, but he had a block time with Mark Miller, the brigade chaplain. And so at first I thought he was getting counselings, and then jealously, I'm like, how the hell is the chaplain getting more counselings than me? I'm like, maybe it's negative counselings. But then I asked the front office, and they're like, no, he's just meeting with the chaplain because everyone should see the chaplain. So having that in my head, it was a little easier because I had a leader who was leading by example, and it wasn't that hard to see the chaplain because my NCIC was gonna, like he said, he was gonna take me down, choke me out, and carry me. So I'd rather go consciously than unconsciously. But it was, that first meeting was tough. I didn't really get a whole lot out of it because I wasn't willing to open up. But then Mark and I would have more sessions together, and sometimes walking back to where we would sleep at night, and and that's where he'd share stuff. He goes, I think you're gonna be like King David or something. I was like, what? He's like, because he went through struggles. He wasn't perfect and all this stuff. And by no means as a battalion commander am I saying that, but it was something to relate to. And I was like, oh, but yeah, they are valuable. I mean, we got a great brigade chaplain here. I got a good battalion chaplain. She'll come by. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get you on my calendar like Colonel Magzig used to do. And I haven't done that yet. It's just been busy, no excuse. But she comes by, and then I'm like trying to, like, sometimes even I'm trying to scoot out of the office, and she stands right in the doorway, and I'm like, okay, so then we have a good talk.
Yeah. So kind of more of this is kind of a lead-in question. How much are you benching nowadays?
Actually, well, not that great. We had our inaugural kickoff on our battalion birthday, 1,000-pound club for males and 600-pound club for females is the usually Olympic standard. And I got 905, so I got some work in. So I think I only got like 245. I was actually doing drop sets this morning because I was like, what should I lift this morning? I'm like, well, I'm going to be on the camera from like here up, so let's pump up the chest and the shoulders, But yeah, we got battalion t-shirts. When you asked me earlier, like, what's the culture and climate here? Like, it is completely shifted. I mean, my first week they asked about 1,000-pound club, 600-pound club. I'm signing airborne packets. We got paid parachutes positions coming. The memo signed. We We got a best Ranger team, one that went yesterday. Oaks is going again. And then now we got Lieutenant Isabel Van Atten. And she was also selected to be one of 10 out of the entire Army to go to a 2-week study in Boston. It's like a psychology thing for women in combat arms. She was infantry prior, so they got a group. So it's just like, it is not hard to recruit and retain in 319th. And it's not because of me. It's just all the leaders that are here and the initiatives we're taking on. Had a rock drill yesterday. I don't know if I didn't tell you, John, we're moving the entire battalion, company cough, barracks, and the motor pool. The future motor pool. We got to get it IOC, FOC first, but we're moving it all down to Ardennes, baby, down to 82nd
nice.
land. Because
talking about.
Yeah, because the R struck with Cav going away, then general work was, before it was pre-decisional of, hey, proximity does mean something, and if you're direct support to 82nd, then let's get you down here. So like I'm all pumped. Of course, I support 82nd. We're right there. That's my old stomping grounds, and so I'm telling the soldiers, I'm like, you got Ritzeps is a phenomenal gym. We're finally next to a DFAC, Falcon DFAC. There's a little shopette area, another gym over there. I'm like, and it's just the culture. I keep telling them. And what all my soldiers say, they go, sir, we went down there. We see there's a Chipotle. They're all talking about the Chipotle. I'm like, Chipotle? But, if they're happy, then it's all good.
Yeah. So following the benching question, which you are outlifting me right now, I'm kind of going through I'm getting old. When's the next SKS WOD? You have something on the calendar for this year?
So the only tough thing about taking command is so long story short, I'm taking a pause on being on a board of directors for Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome for the board for Smith-Kingsmore.org. So I talked to legal when I was going pre-command course, and I talked to him multiple times because I wasn't liking the answer I got, but every time I got the same answer. So I can, as a commander, if I'm a board member, but I also now have means and access to how we spend money on a nonprofit. I can say, hey, there's this great WOD coming up and it's a fundraiser WOD. But now, where does the gray area, does it get to be command influence, where I'm telling a soldier, hey, you will do this fundraiser WOD, especially if it's off work hours, or like you will donate, they can take it that way. I mean, even this morning, I saw this lieutenant was working out around us, one of my lieutenants, and the 319th gym here sucks. We just got our new gym equipment. I'm going to do that right when I get there. But so it's like one bench, and I'm doing like rounds, rowing and stuff. And I said, hey, just jump in when you want. I'm just doing rounds. I literally meant just use the bench also. But then I noticed as I'm getting off one station, then he's getting on, then I'm going to the next station. I'm like, is he doing like same work as me? No, he literally took it as like, hey, Lieutenant, why aren't you jumping in on my workout? And I just meant it as like, hey, use the bench. So there isn't one in the near future. However, talking to legal now that I'm off the board of directors and I have no means and access to the finance with Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome .org, I can design and put out a fundraising WOD that just supports this nonprofit, So I will look to do, but really I'm going to develop first is a hero WOD, because we have Colonel Felt's WOD, that Lieutenant Colonel, shout out to Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Ryan, good friend of mine. Awesome that I got to take command from him. Not awesome for him. He was super sad that day, but he was happy at least it was going to me. And he designed the hero WOD for the fallen of Colonel Feltz. And then I got Sergeant Carroll up here in the conference room. So I'm going to design a hero WOD for him. And the Colonel Feltz one, that WOD's no joke. It's a lot like Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome WODs, but of course to Colonel Ryan's is always total body. I always call it total body BS. He never wants to bench with me or do like Olympic lifting. But no, I love the guy.
That's his Achilles heel.
His is bench and I think he got his pull-up game, but I mean he can crush me in everything. We actually threw down on the ACFT my rip week. I was like, "You take an ACFT?" He's like, "Yeah." And then I showed up, and the irony was, because I was in Canada, I had no access to a gym, and so I was doing YouTube. I was doing tons of calisthenics and running. He beat me on the deadlift, and I beat him on the run. So we're like, "What the hell's going on?" But he's got a bum knee, along with me. So
Yeah. You have any questions of us?
I mean, so if you don't mind me asking, John, because I know you're pretty open, but you have, and I saw you shared your story with the belt I gave you with Angel 6, and you went through another struggle. Like, do you think some of these tools are helpful to you, or what tools do you have that could help other people? Because you've been through some stuff too, man.
Yeah. So, as we start this, I have to ask, did you create the rock analogy?
No.
Okay.
I heard it from my wife, who I think she either saw it somewhere or heard it on, oh, she's gonna kill me, but there's this great podcast out there that deals with struggle and stuff.
Okay.
I'll ask her what she got from.
Well, it's kind of goes back when if you tell something enough, it just becomes the truth. But I have found that to be the most beneficial thing, and I'm gonna try not, MI officer, and you know me, sir, as well, AJ, pretty emotional guy. I don't like to air that out because I've always kind of seen that as weakness. I still feel like feel that way to this day. But yeah, going through 525 always has a special place in my heart, just based on some things that happened, and it was a unit that really took care of me, and I'll just go on out there. We're talking about being vulnerable. Let's do it, right? When I was on deployment, second miscarriage, kind of more of a long-term one, and Colonel Gill, who I know got me home during that, and Colonel A, the S1, the best S1 I've ever seen, checking on me, and Colonel Bennett. I don't know if he's promoted at this point. They made a point of getting me home to be with my wife, and I'll never forget. Like, damn, man, I've been so good in the guard about keeping this side of me like sheltered. It's kind of weird talking
Like
about
Frozen.
this now.
Like
Yeah,
Frozen.
yeah,
Let it go. Let it go.
yeah. But that when you gave me that belt and you told me about the struggle is sometimes it's small. It's a skipping stone that you carry with you. And sometimes it's a boulder. I found that to be super true, and kind of how that is carried on even now as a National Guardsman. I'll never forget, it was the Iron Bowl and last year, and Auburn lost like in heartbreaking fashion to Alabama, right? And you talk about first world problems, you're like, oh my God, my team lost everything. And I get a call from a guy who I'd actually recruited from 275. And he came to the guard, and man of faith, really good dude, sniper, like, this is what you want in the guard, right? And he calls me to let me know. I knew him and his wife were pregnant, and full term, and they went to deliver, and the baby was born stillborn. And my first sergeant, Mike Halbone, went with me to the hospital to talk to them, and I brought up what I know, the rock analogy, and a couple of verses from the Bible. But Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like a little bitch right now. The
Yeah.
I'll edit that out. But
Yeah.
uh, just examples like that. I mean, those are things that I'll never forget. And I'll say this about 525. During our time there, I did feel like we talked a lot about our feelings and our emotions, especially on like foundational days. I don't even know if they're still doing that, but and it was completely different from coming from the infantry where we did not do that at all. But there was a reason why we did that, and since leaving there, getting to meet you, Tom Morgan, Captain Dawson, a bunch of good people. I've always tried to share that message, and whether it was at the career course, talking about the Golden Triangle, probably the most recent one here in the Guard, got to speak to a commissioning class out at Central Washington, and thinking about like what I was going to talk about, like I was thinking about like, oh, this is how you handle NCOs, this is how you write your OER support form. And I asked my wife, and she was like, you should talk about like how to handle life when it sucks. And that's what I did, and brought you up as an example. Um, and yeah, I don't think we talk about that enough, and yeah, so
I'll tell you. So yeah, when you mentioned Tom Morgan, I actually had him in my office, not the day we did comms check, and I was interviewing another major for XOS3, but Tom came through and interviewed him for XOS3. But yeah, I always ask, and you don't have to edit this out, because they owe me a bluff card, and on the bluff card they owe me top three strengths, top three weaknesses, because then I want to talk about it, and I won't say what I'm looking for in answers there, because then that'll get out there. But Tom went a step further. We're talking about strengths, I think, and Tom will, he's very well put together, and he's talking, and
he's a beautiful
you know,
man.
and I'm like, where's he getting at? What is he getting to? But then he brought up Dr. Brene Brown, which I highly recommend. We talk about, call to courage, call to lead, and true strength is vulnerability. And I was like, hell yeah, I know Dr. Brene Brown. Actually, my wife put me on her stuff because she's like, oh, there's this Netflix thing. She's got a short on Netflix, and it's this psychologist, and I really want to watch this video. Watch this, and I'm like, I still, even though I think I'm in a good place, I'm like, ugh, I'm going to hear about this. But she speaks real. She's worked with a lot of military leaders. I'd love to get her a guest speaker here, but maybe I don't even know if she goes down to battalion level. But anyways, Tom brought up, he's like, well, sir, I know what my two core values are that she talks about in one of her books. And I was like, I don't know if it's call to lead, because I'm going to do an LPD on that book in the near future. But he brought up his core values, and then I started thinking, I'm like, man, I never thought about what my core values are. And then what came was a gut feeling, and I've been thinking about it more, but I think my core values are savagery and love. And it kind of goes back to that Dark Wolf, Life Wolf, but like, I don't ever want to become civilized. And I know people sometimes take that wrong. Like, I will always try and be professional and be a better professional, but I don't ever want to be civilized, because then I feel like I'll become complacent. And my wife still knows I'm her break glass in case of emergency, if there's something to do with our son or something to do with my family. And when I was on the Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome board of directors, and fundraising, they started to nickname me the Baba Yaga, the John Wick of fundraising, because I go and I assassinate, and I will get fundraising, because I truly believe the savagery to my love is, I truly believe my son's life is on the line, and these other kids. And if I find out you didn't donate and you said you would, and you got a mocha chocolate, whatever, that costs $7 BS from Starbucks, like, I will call you out. I'm not a Boy Scout. I don't go around selling popcorn. I go for that. So I think it's important to think about what your core values are. And I think yours is definitely love, but it's for you to decide. And you can still be a good leader when you're emotional like that. I don't think General Donahue will mind me saying this, because he's very open, but he he got emotional when General Menace was retiring. You know, and General Donahue is a killer. Like, we all know that. Like, he is a killer. But he's the most humble, down to earth. Like, I'd be working out with him in the team, that the heads there at Corps, and I think it was like my 40th birthday or day before, and I'm like, I forget what the workout was. I'm like, something with squats though, and I remember I'm like, ugh, like you say, you're getting old. I'm just like, and it was a brief moment. I'm just like, okay, next set. And he comes over and he's like, what's going on, Eric? And I'm like, and I know he's older than me. I was like, well, sir, to be honest, I'm turning 40, and this stuff isn't getting any easier. These weights aren't getting any lighter. And he's like, this is too easy. He's like, just keep it up every day. He's like, keep going. And he goes, I'm this age. And he just walks off. And I'm like, well, one, he's leading by example, and two, he isn't wrong, you know. And but he got emotional when General Menace was retiring. And then at my hail, when I was at Corps for hail and farewell, we knew about one, or maybe I know one of General Donahue's sons in EF&P. My wife, with that my special brother book at my hail, my wife goes, you better give him the book. And if there's anyone I fear more than General Donahue getting angry at me, it's my wife. And I said, I'm not giving him a book. Like, it's going to look like I'm kissing butt or something. She's like, if you don't give him a book, I'll give him a book and say you're too much of a coward to give him a book. So of course he's coming around. She's like, grab the book. So I give him the book. I'm like, hey, sir, you know, apologize, but here's a book I wrote about my son and my daughter, trying to figure out about why her brother's called special. And he's taking the time, you know, he's reading it, and he's like tearing up in his eyes. And he's like, this is, you wrote this? And I'm like, yes, sir. And then he's like, I'm getting kind of emotional. And then my wife's over there bawling, and then I'm getting emotional, and I'm like, what the heck? And then he's like talking to us, shaking hands. And then now my wife sees that side of him. And now because I want to support him as who he is as a person, not just because of his rank. So that's how you get buying. And I don't mean like be crying and bawling in front of your soldiers, but when you got to talk about a sensitive subject, be professional, don't violate sharp and and stuff, but be raw and real. This is actually the first time I told this story and didn't get choked up. I think it was maybe because it's my first podcast, but I'm actually doing this story. It's not Foundational Day, but we do payday activities. And so our books came in late for our book LPD. So I wanted to give my leaders a chance to read. So instead I said, hey, I'll do this story. And actually Colonel Hardy, he's 525, my brigade commander, 525. And, I said, hey, we can open this up to brigade. Then he must have gave it to his wife, and his wife's like, hey, I think the spouses should go. I'll bring in the spouses. And then she's like, I think your wife should tell her story. And I'm like, well, I was like, she gets pissed when I volunteer for stuff, even though I volunteer for this podcast, and you should hear her story. I absolutely do. And don't have to edit that out. I'll probably just sleep on the couch one night, maybe two, whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'll add her to the list. But I was whiteboarding this out, and I told my wife when you had mentioned General Donahue, which I remember on deployment he was the SOC Alpha commander. So, and I've kind of followed him. I know social media loves him. There's a meme page. The guy who runs it is anonymous, but he knows you. I posted a photo of you when you were taking command, and he said, this page is called Dank Memes for Dragon Teens. It's a Corps related page. And he's like, Colonel Kelly's a good dude, but he always calls General Donahue Dragon Daddy. And I added General Donahue's name on the whiteboard. It's like, how cool would that be? Like, to get him on there, especially before Dank Memes for Dragon Teens does it. So, yeah. But
yeah,
he's been
on From the Green Notebook.
Okay.
I think there's a recent one. I think he's been on 3 times.
Wow.
And he actually, I stole 2 of his. I don't know if he calls it his vision pillars. I forget but it's like, or his guidance or whatever. But he had, I stole 2 of them, and it was relentless and best teammate. And so my vision, my commander's vision, I wanted it simple for a reason. because what soldier is going to read multiple pages of a commander's vision? It's not going to get into their brains. And so I stole two of his, and I have them on pillars. Wanted to give a visual, and then the other one is professional. And I'm always talking to, best teammates with 82nd, with 519th. We're breaking down the wall that used to be between 519th and 319th. I think it helps that we have 302nd now. We have more players. The game is not just two, and thinking there can only be one. The best teammate, relentless, because Captain Donahue is a good example of setting up comms here. The Wi-Fi puck wasn't the best, and he got out. I see the tactical means. I'm like, did I miss some sort of training we're supposed to do? But he gets to yes. He's relentless about it. He could have easily at some point been like, hey, sir, is there any way you can take this at home with your civilian computer? And so he never once asked me that. So, relentless. And then professional is just honoring our MI tradecraft, our warrior skills. We can't, you can't, it's got to be a balance between can't be totally off the wall, relentless, or just completely professional and you're not attacking things. You have to do both. But I love I love when he gave that guidance to the staff. And I think his other one was, oh man, he's going to kill me. It was either unreasonable or I think it was unapologetic. It was something like that. And so I didn't use that one because we get it on the staff. I think more seniors, like we get it. Like you want to get to yes and don't apologize when you're getting after it and you're sticking with his intent and means and end state. But I was a little worried about telling a private, like, be unapologetic. And then, walking by an officer and just saluting, like flipping them off. I don't need to apologize to you. I was like, I don't know if that'll go well. I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. So as we wrap this up, where can we find out more about the SKS nonprofit and how can we assist?
Oh yeah, thank you. Because my friends would have killed me. I'm like, you go on there and not say anything, but it's at www.smith-kingsmore.org, and if you look up in these slides or something, smith-kingsmore.org, and if you Google search smith-kingsmore.org, or if you just Google search Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome, I think we work the AI stuff. We're now smith-kingsmore.org pops up as, I think it's the number one at the top of the page. I know Mike Grosclose and Dan Lepore were how to do that AI stuff. I mean, again, General Donahue will kill me because he's a big data guy, and I'm like, I had good ideas for the FMP app. I only know if I say, you just got to look at the APIs and how it connects through the pathways. I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, one last, appreciate you sharing that. We'll definitely, we'll put the link along with this podcast so the listeners, all three of them can check it out. And then finally, one challenge I would recommend to you, sir, is to make the jump from Facebook to Instagram, because I'm a big believer, like that's where the generation is. And I know it's, I know you're in command, things like that, but it's kind of just been an incredible journey. The network and the amount of people that can watch your stuff is, it's incredible. If you want to get millions of views or things like that. And it's never about, I think the most important thing about it is not about you, and it's not about, just selling shirts or something like that, but it's a great way to communicate. So I would encourage you to do that. Get off of Facebook. It's for old people.
So Instagram, I'll make the jump. But I'm going to put control measures on it too, because sometimes I get on Facebook and I always have to be mindful of what I say. But again, I believe there's nothing wrong with putting a professional joke on there or so it's all good. I haven't been on the athlete pages much, just because I've been trying to get this 1,000-pound club. I'm like, I don't got time for video right now.
Yeah. Oh, and it's cool to like I already mentioned, Dank Memes for Dragon Teens knows you had the best things to say. I don't know if you can see this flag in the background, the National Guard flag, but Platoon Daddy runs a shirt company, and I know he knows you, and he had the best things to say. I know he's a big fan of General Donahue as well. But you're already known, so you will grow, and I think it would be a great thing to message, this story, things like that, and just continue to inspire people. And I really miss our Friday runs. So
Yeah,
yeah,
me too.
yeah.
Our old man Hoka shoe runs. I remember that. I like Hokas, man.
Yeah, I still
But
wear them, size 14s. But hey, I appreciate you coming on. Sorry for the delays with the internet. It's definitely our side, not you. So I think next time I do it, when I do the one with your wife, I'll do it from the house instead of
Okay.
coming in to work with this terrible paneling and all this other shit back here. But appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing your story, and we'll see you next time. Maybe get a part 2. Talk about something else or just BS.
all right. I
All right.
appreciate it. Thanks
Take
so
care.
much, John. Thanks.
All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that interview. And yeah, don't think you're blessing me because I'm an emotional bitch. All right, next segment.
We're here for you.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it. All right. Yeah. All right, so this next segment we're going to do, okay, is called Headline News. So on Army Times, there's a portion of it called, I think, Army Times is kind of just a rag. I don't really look at it daily. I know that's surprising to both of you.
Yeah.
There is this great corner. It's called Off Duty. So we're going to bring this up, okay? I picked like 3 or 4 of them, and we're going to discuss and get your thoughts on them. All right, so first, starting off. Okay. So, boys, MRE, meal ready to bulk. Pentagon urged to add creatine to MREs. And there's work in the House version of the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act is calling for the addition of a popular muscle-building supplement to the military's traditional meals ready rations.
All right. When was this published?
Don't worry, you're worrying about things that don't matter.
This isn't an April Fool's. You know how they do like those April
Let's see,
Fools?
11 July.
Okay.
This isn't Duffel Blog, all right?
Okay,
It's
I'm
Army
just-
Times,
this
so it's
is Army
100%
Times.
true. 100%
Yeah,
true.
100%.
So what do we think?
Facts.
So this MRE here, it's vegetable crumbles and pasta and taco style sauce. I'm not really a big fan of that one. Imagine if there was some creatine in that.
Mm.
I know you hate creatine.
It's not that I hate creatine.
Yes,
It's
you
not.
do.
No, I don't hate creatine. I take
You're always like,
creatine.
my dad's a urologist, and he says creatine's horrible for you.
No, my dad's a urologist. Yes, this is true. My dad is a wee doc. But like the amount of dudes in the army when he was in the army that would come in with like horrendous kidney stones from supplement use and lack of hydration.
Why do you look at me when I say
Pretty.
that?
No particular reason. No particular reason.
These
He
questions
throws stones. He throws stones. You grow stones. So like,
I pass them in 12 hours. Yeah. Round of applause.
No, I mean I'm not opposed. I've taken creatine before. I just think personally, we'd probably be better off putting like a weight loss supplement into most of the MREs.
See, I think what we should be adding, why don't we add pre-workout? I don't
Pre-workout.
know how that would work for
Have you-
certain schools, but like, imagine if you started your day out in the field with a shot of C4.
If you started the day out, if that C4 was accompanied with the MRE,
Yeah.
that'd mean you'd have so much energy while simultaneously growing a giant log inside of you that is painful.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, like, when they talked about making the ACFT, like, MOS driven.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if they had MREs that are MOS driven? And I was like, yeah, I would definitely want a 240 gunner with, like,
Oh yeah.
just jazzed up on some C4 or jacked 3D. But then I was like, oh, I don't know if I want the S1 guys. But then I was like, yes, I do. So they're like, update the per stat. Maybe they're...
Oh yeah, 100%.
But for the creatine stuff, I think there's benefit nutritionally for it. I
Sure.
take it twice a day, split it in there, keep it loaded in and all that stuff. I also get blood tests pretty regularly, so I know like if I'm having too much or too little of certain things. There is benefits to it, but also hydration is a key. And if anybody has ever been in the field and you're there for multiple days and you watch that one soldier who's just crushing energy drinks,
Yeah.
like
Camelback full of rippets.
yeah, and just sucking them down, and then you make a movement and they're just cramping and dying, and you're like, dude, we really need to think about this. Like, we all know what's going on, but I think even when someone chooses to do kind of the wrong thing with their hydration and stuff like that, that's a problem, and I think that's kind of it turns into a leader issue, which it should just be like a thing that you do to sustain yourself, but I don't know if this is even worth trying to implement. I don't know if the gain of putting creatine inside of, like, what is it going to be, like a chewable gummy?
Yeah.
I would honestly rather see the Skittles
Or
disappear.
you just have to just a scoop.
Dry scoop it?
Dry scoop it.
Just
I haven't taken creatine since college,
Mm.
but when I took it, that's how I did it.
Just dry scoop.
Dry scoop it. Yeah, and we were buying this stuff like offline. It was not. It might have been the black market, but I'll tell you, man, I got freaking shredded with that shit.
He's on all those memes about the moms. Like, are you using creatine? Well, I think the benefit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like cognitively, and also for your muscular skeletal system that obviously creatine helps with, and it's an energy source. Your muscles use it,
and it's naturally occurring inside,
and meat and a bunch of different things. But I personally think the MREs, like, I hate going to the field, not because MREs like stop me up. It does, like, I've never been stopped up ever. Well, pretty much never. I have like a bunch of weird.
It's a weird brag, but okay.
But yeah. So for me though, when
weird flex.
Yeah. Even at Ranger School, it's just like I soft serve, boom, like no problem. I have a very Anyhow, so whenever I eat MREs, I get kind of frustrated by what's inside of them. Not because it just feels like it's a bunch of snack food, and then like this food that can last 1,000 years. That's like the main meal. And so I'm like, I know there's nutritional value in it, but I would honestly like to see the candy disappear and the crappy snacks and actually see like dehydrated fruit, dehydrated vegetables. Like, and I know people will be like, okay, but I on the nutrition side, I can't see how we're like, yeah, you need to take care of your body. Right. And then get like, here's a sack of Skittles, dude.
Yeah, here's your sour Skittles and Twizzlers.
Yeah. Well, when we, Tyler Butterworth's coming out here in a few weeks. He's tried a lot of MREs from different countries. He actually tried a smidgen of it. He tried an MRE from Vietnam. Came in a black bag. He showed it to me and everything. And I was like, dude, you really ate this? And he's like, I had like a little bit. But the one thing he was saying about other countries' MREs, they're like full-on meals, like humongous meal. Like he's like, all their MREs have been better than anything I ever had in the U.S. Army. So
and not cans of Vienna sausages.
Yeah. But it's also, it's like when they give you an MRE, like it's like 3-in-1.
Mm-hmm.
So
gotcha.
Which I don't know how that would work in the US.
Rations.
Well, like if you gave a kid 3-in-1 MRE in the US Army or the National Guard,
smashing it.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
And then you're hungry yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, no, I think I totally agree with like taking the sugary crap out of the MREs. I will say that I know peanut M&Ms are not the best version of this, but something like that would be about as far as I'd want to take it. You know, a little chocolate, some nuts, or something, maybe a healthier version of a peanut M&M. But
so I think we're missing the point on this. I think what they're trying to do now, they're trying to cover up for the fact that they took the glass Tabasco out of the MRE, and they know that they made a fatal error because this pissed everybody. I don't think anybody was cool with that.
That was just a ready-to-use chemical weapon.
And if you're tired, just a little in your mouth. Like, I was drinking those. Like,
put it in your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I did that in Ranger School. I did the tear duct with the Tabasco sauce one night. It was, I mean, it worked, but it was horrible.
Yeah. You had the
were you pictured in surviving the cut?
No.
Oh, okay. No. I was just wondering. Because that's where the first time I heard about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I never saw anyone do it when I was there. So
no, we did that. There was a guy we didn't like. We definitely CS bombed him with Tabasco in the heater in his little fart sack. It was kind of funny.
No. All right, so we agree. Well, we're kind of torn at creatine, but we do think there needs to be improvement with MREs.
Yeah.
All right, we can agree to disagree and agree.
Maybe add Ozempic.
All right, something really important. Air Force Falcons unveiled glorious AFSOC? Did I say it?
AFSOC, yeah.
Themed football unis. Look at those, guys. Now, y'all all know me as a West Point grad. I really get into it. What's your thoughts on this?
It's a cool looking uniform.
I just want to know, and I might have to edit this portion out. We got money to pay for this shit, but we can't get a new barracks.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot weird. Well, I guess.
You know what?
They got to pay
for the Air Force.
The Air Force has
their barracks are probably really good.
They don't have barracks. They just have Hilton Rewards points that they use.
I bet there's somebody sponsoring it, like a
Nike Air Power suit uniform.
Also, it's kind of like Oregon where they get all their Nike stuff.
Yeah. So, any thoughts?
I mean,
it's a cool uniform.
Yeah, it looks. The only thing I'll say is like the Air Force, they're going red and black, and maybe that's the colors that this unit kind of represents.
I thought that was kind of a cool thing that like the Army did, where they started to do like themes of units and stuff like.
yeah.
I mean that kind of like
cool.
I did like that a lot, and I thought that was nifty. But when I think of the Air Force, I think of like the white and blue.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah. Let me just. I just want to level comms. Flatten comms. Sorry, level the bubbles. As enlisted, as a prior service enlisted, E7, as a soon-to-be first sergeant. Do y'all care about the West Point game versus Navy?
No.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad. I got you.
No, do I care about it? Do I care? Do I care about it? I kind of like. I do like college football.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy watching football.
Yeah.
It's just like during football season, there's so much of it going on, and we work on the weekends, and then like I have my kids. So by the time I have like a free weekend to watch football, and I'm like trying to pay attention to my children and like be a husband and stuff like that, it's really hard to like take time when I'd rather watch like the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah,
the Denver
real
Broncos.
football.
Yeah,
games.
yeah. It's funny that I think the last year's game we played it at RSP. Like we let the kids watch.
Oh, watch it. Did they get it? Did they get down?
They got excited because I wasn't sitting there trying to tell them about stuff. They're just like, wait, you're not gonna like force information. We're not gonna do like training and stuff. This is cool.
I want you each to write a paper on what that patch means.
Yeah, but it was really funny because I think like the Army's quarterback like couldn't throw, so he just ran the shit out of the ball.
I think they run like it's like a triple option or a wishbone package, like
Something.
very run heavy. They never have been known for that.
Which is cool, but I'm not like this is college football. Like, I don't want to.
I mean, a 35-yard throw is great for hand grenades, but in football,
Yeah, no
not the
passes
most
for 35 yards.
Yeah.
But when you meet at West Point, how are you doing tonight? What are you doing tonight? Okay, feds. All right.
It's cool.
No.
Not
All right. A recent one, boys, 3 days ago.
Oh,
All right.
nice.
Triple Tab Soldier completes Ranger, Sapper, and Jungle courses. This is a rare feat. All right, First Lieutenant Mackenzie Kokorin with 29th BEB, 3rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 25th Infantry Division at Schofield Barracks. She did it. As one of the few women to wear some of the most difficult to receive tabs. An arch worn on uniforms signifying a special skill. I've never actually heard my Ranger tab described that way.
It's an arch.
Wait, what?
Special skill.
Yeah.
Arch worn on uniforms.
Well, I guess both.
Well,
So what about so if we had to triage these,
yeah.
all right, as greatest accomplishment to lowest accomplishment, how are we going?
Oh, Ranger School's greatest accomplishment. I
Yeah,
think you can
for
actually go based on the look of the awards, right?
So right down
So
left.
no. It's
Oh,
like
right,
Ranger
right.
School looked professional, still fairly minimalistic, but it looks looks normal.
I want to see how she was wearing them.
And
Yeah,
then
which
you
is at
see
the top?
the
Big Ranger.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
good job.
yeah,
LT.
Ranger Sapper, and then Jungle's a made up tab, but their certificate looks legit as well. The Sapper certificate looks like something that you get from middle school as a part of like some science
Look
fair.
at that cert. It's got Pathfinder. It's got Aerosol.
It's got all these things that have nothing to do
With
with
Sapper.
the actual. They had to like bandwagon achievements from other courses to make
Yeah.
it seem cool.
Hey, whatever officer is designing the certs for Sapper School, do better. All right,
Tone it down
your
a bit.
PowerPoint skills are weak.
Yeah, tone it down a bit, sir.
I have a jungle comment to make. So when I was at Mountain Warfare School, I was blessed with an awesome platoon. Like we had a bunch of great guys there. One of them was this guy named Sergeant Lino, and he is in the Hawaii National Guard and went to the jungle school. I don't remember if he exactly works there or not. This guy was quite literally a veritable ninja. Like, smashed the land nav course, and whenever we did like patrols and stuff, dude was point man, always knew where he's at, like super squared away guy. Was showing us high speed different knots to like create certain things that was like in addition to the stuff we were learning. He was in the running for honor grad, but there was some wild lieutenant that went there and just like got a perfect score and everything, and he was like, yeah, he's God's gift to the infantry. But Fred Lino, if you're listening to this, you were a great soldier, and you really made me want to go to jungle school after I talked to him. I was like, man, it'd be really cool to go do that. So I highly value at least for the infantry aspect. I'd be interested what this young lieutenant, like what her branch is. If she,
I'm pretty sure she's an engineer.
she's an engineer. Okay, so she's got to do the sapper stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, doesn't got it, but
Here she says Ranger was physically easier than Sapper.
what?
Well, Sapper's condensed, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a month.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could say that 2 months school compared to a month. I
Uh,
don't know.
It's like, I mean,
I'm
I don't know. I
curious.
haven't been to Sapper School, so I can't really.
She's wanting to go to RASP also, it says.
Yeah,
See
she
how that
is.
we'll see how that 3-week RASP compares to the other two.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
that's wild that she said that. Oh.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I've never done Sapper
Maybe we
School,
should
so
get her on.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think so. That'd be a good interview.
With
Yeah.
Sung Ying, huh?
Yeah. We could have her like a Ranger Sapper throwdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
We
can
gotta
be in
find
the,
someone-
she
Yeah,
can
she's in the middle.
Yeah.
She's the one who's on both, so she.
Yeah. She's gonna have to mediate the conversation.
Yeah. But good job, LT. Great
Yeah.
job.
Nice work.
Good stuff.
Yeah, very proud of you.
Yeah.
Making-
All right, last one. Okay, I will point out this was 6 months ago. Okay. DFACs closed at Fort Carson. Empty food kiosks leave soldiers hungry. I guess this happened over a weekend. So the meme community from Fort Carson is actually very strong. This guy called Specialist in Charge, who has a great meme page. I think he's left since then. And then one of my favorite meme pages, 4th Infantry, down there is another great one. I remember them bringing this up. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, with today's economy, inflation, and the lack of, I can see how this can happen. Like,
Yeah.
but I also grew up in a time where like we didn't live off the shop ed, and even the guys that were in the DFAC, the only time we ate at the DFAC was when we had like a longer PT session and we had to be back.
He's
super
actually
fast.
featured in this. That comes from Specialist in Charge page.
Oh wow.
Look at
Yeah.
all those Slim Jims. All right, sorry.
No, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
shout
I mean-
out Specialist in Charge. You made it.
You made it.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's interesting. I'm sure there was a lot of people super mad about it. They couldn't get their Slim Jims and White Monsters and stuff like that. But I feel like,
All right, if we were talking about like some installation in, you know, like Djibouti or something, I'd feel sympathetic.
yeah, they're by a lot of.
But you're pardon my French, like kind of to your point, when I was in the barracks, I only ate at the DFAC on work days when I was in the barracks. Otherwise, I was out and about. I was eating out on the town. I was having dinner with like friends and stuff or whatever. Like, you're in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, so your kiosk at Fort Carson is down. There's still a 7-Eleven within a mile of the gate somewhere.
Yeah,
or
let's
something
really
like
play
that.
this out. Like if you're a leader and your Joes come in and they're like hungry,
Right.
or they're like, yeah, we have this issue. It's like, well, worst case scenario, you got a kid that doesn't have very much money for whatever reason,
Yeah.
and you pick up some hot and readies, which isn't the greatest nutritional value, or you like, you figure out a way to like, okay, we're taking the kids to lunch today.
The hungry man.
We're taking the boys to lunch, or you give them a little bit of extra time. Like I feel like this is pretty.
Well,
easy
so
to-
there's two pieces to this though. So like, I initially go to the joke perspective of like, oh, you can find food. You
Yeah.
can find food. You're in the United States, man. Like,
Yeah.
or gal. Like, you can go out and find some chow. But on the flip side of that, as a leader, how do you shut down DFACs
Right.
and leave
'Cause
your
they're taking-
soldiers with limited options for food? Like that,
You're taking their
to me
BAS.
seems like a massive
Yeah.
leadership failure.
Yeah, you're taking their BAS so they can eat there.
Right. And
Right.
even if they didn't, it's at the same time, it's like you do want the installation to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Right. And that was one of the most, so like when I was down at Fort Johnson earlier this year, like, no disrespect to Leesville, Louisiana, but Fort Johnson was like the shining jewel of that area. It was actually a very nice installation when
Yeah.
you got onto the main post part of it. And soldiers had everything you could ever possibly want or need on that installation if you're like a permanent party there. Tigerland's a dumpster fire, but the rest of it was great.
Tiger man.
But I mean, like, as a leader, you want to make sure that your people are taken care of. Like,
Yeah.
You want to be able to provide for them because at the end of the day, if all they have to rely on is what you're able to provide,
Yeah.
that should be enough.
Yeah, I think that like with the BAS and the kids that live in the barracks, this could be with the DFACs being shut down. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do? And I know that with training and the way that stuff goes, like you can't always just leave for, because let's be real, it takes 15 minutes to get anywhere,
True.
20 minutes, and then you got the revert. So you're looking at an hour minimum to pick some. I mean, just kind of.
Yeah.
one of the cool things when I was at Fort Bragg, they had.
Here we go.
Yeah. Back at Bragg.
back at Liberties.
Wipe off my stolen. Actually, I was never in this unit. This is a Fort Bragg recruiting shirt. All right, just want to get that out here. They have these out for free. Fort Bragg, greatest installation in the world, center of the universe. They had mobile defects that would go around post.
Like gut truck defect?
Yeah, right.
Gut truck
But Phil, 92 Golfs running them. We used to eat them. It was actually pretty good.
Really?
Yeah. There's something about that can be said about the, I don't know, quality of 92 Golfs in certain units. Like, I never ate a defac at Bragg that was like shit. It was like there's a lot of pride in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even in that mobile defac, like,
I'll tell you what.
it's good.
I've only found one defac, and it belonged to the big brothers in the Army, like the best of the best. That was better than what you get in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Like the 92 Golfs, like shout out to the 92 Golfs and Regiment because you guys are top freaking tier. Like the chows are amazing.
Yeah.
And the food's always good.
Yeah.
Like
I've never really experienced that.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've been over here and there's just like, you go back there and there's some like E4, we call them the Hamburglar. Drink with them on the weekends, like give you a couple extra patties and stuff like that. Like, you're just happy about it.
You're just happy about it.
Yeah.
Shout out to the good ones, the 92
Yeah.
Golfs. The other ones do better.
Yeah.
Appreciate you though. All right.
We appreciate the seconds.
All right. Okay, our last segment. Thanks. That was kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of fun. Yeah. Every times there are some good things in there.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought?
All right. Okay, to wrap this up, try something new. So we're going to, for each show, AJ's going to bring in something new for all of us to try. I guess that doesn't really work for you because you've already tried it.
Yeah, we can rotate if you want.
Rotate. All right, okay.
Rotate.
Try something new. It can be anything as long as it's legal and moral.
Yeah, legal.
All right.
The big piece.
But what do you got for us to end the show with?
So, I was doing some gunnery, and it was like 36 hours of gunnery. Like I was doing VC stuff, and there was a guy up there running the towers. This old guy named Mahoney, Sergeant Mahoney. He's out now. The dude is,
he's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's like a tugboat operator up in Alaska. The guy is hilarious, and he's probably one of the greatest like operators of like cameras, doing gunnery stuff, and he's been up there the whole time. I've been like running down in VC and all this other kind of stuff, and I'm like just ripping through Bangs and Copenhagen as much as I can, and I'm like, I am starting to lose it. It's like 36 hours in, and I'm like starting to get kind of crazy, getting loony. And we're in between guys coming up, and I go up there, and I'm like, dude, I'm burnt out. And he's like, he pulls out a thing of snuff and puts it on the table. He's like, just take a little bump of that, bud. You'll be all right. And I was like, I've never done that before. And he's like, well, yeah, just take a little bit. And it was German mentholated snuff, so it's like super fine, very minty. And I took a couple little rips out. I was like, this is amazing. And it got me through the next day. Just like every couple iterations, go up there and it was amazing. So then my FTC chief, Sergeant Malouk, I was like, dude, we're leaving. And I was like, hey, we're heading back to the armory. We're in my truck. I was like, let's grab some snuff. So I grabbed the cheapest snuff I can find at like the Native American gas station. And it's not mentholated. It's like this chunky stuff. And I'm driving. And I was like, hey, dude, load me up. And he like puts a giant fat pile in my hand, and I just go like this, and it felt like someone hit me in the sinuses with an ice pick. I almost drove off the road, and he is like peeing his pants, crying. I'm crying because like and it was a super funny event. So when they went to Poland, which is like a ways ago now, they brought this back for me. It's mentholated Polish snuff.
Did they just bring back one, or like a?
He brought this back. They also had this white powder. It was guarana, which if you look at the ingredients of energy drinks, it's guarana's in there, and like caffeine and some other stuff. And they would take some of this and some of the guarana, so that's apparently.
You know what that reminds me of? That remember that movie Lord of War?
Yeah.
Brown.
Yeah.
This is the gunpowder and cocaine.
Yeah. Can you imagine a bunch of mortars just sitting there?
God.
Yeah. So anyhow, for this device, it's very fine powdery stuff, so you just get a little bit of that in there.
Jesus.
I would recommend like slowing your inhale.
Something.
Yeah. It's great for road trips. If you're starting to feel tired.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if I have anything that necessitates me doing this right now. Like, oh my.
It's like icy hot right up the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you take a lot, and that will make you feel good.
All right. Hey, good way to start the podcast with something that
Yeah. Also, when I was
it has a warning label on it.
Yeah,
I can't read it. It's in German.
Yeah.
Or Polish.
Yeah,
Maybe Germany.
Yeah, when I was in Ireland, like old ladies do this. So you go to the bar, I'm not even kidding you, they have like a little kiosk for it.
Yeah.
And old ladies will grab it and just rip fat lines of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, thanks for bringing this in.
Yeah.
I'm definitely awake now.
Yeah.
All right. Hope y'all enjoyed the show. Join us next time. We're just going to do these randomly. I'm not committing to do this every week. All right.
We got real lives.
Yeah. We work over here.
Yeah,
We're the
we
National
got
Guard.
stuff
We
to
work.
do.
All right. Thanks for joining. We'll pick it up next week. And like and subscribe. Take care.